Okay, so the sequencer on the Matriarch. Now it's very similar to the grandmother if you saw my video on the grandmother sequencer, but if not, let's go through everything one by one. But first off, I want to show you how to get a sequence going just right off the bat, so that way you can start using this thing right away. So you got to go up here to the mode, flip it to record. Now once it's in record mode, any notes that you add, or play I should say, will be added to the sequence. And you have up to 256 steps per sequence. And yes, the Matriarch is capable of having different sequences. So the cool thing about the Matriarch, of course, is that it's paraphonic. So you can also have multiple notes per step in the sequence. So right now I'm just going to show you how to do a monophonic sequence. We have the paraphony set to 1. So if we just start playing some notes. Once you play all the notes that you want, switch it back to sequence over here and then hit play. And then any note you press on the keyboard, it'll start the sequence. Interesting thing is though, what if you press an F instead of a C? I started on C because the sequence started on C. So if I press F, you'll notice that you can transpose your sequence in real time. So you can create some interesting sequences just by transposing them. So your rate knob up here, of course, controls the speed. So that's another way to make them sound interesting. The hold button over here can be used to, of course, hold the sequence without having to press anything. So just press that. Then that way you can mess around with some filter action. Okay, now, so say we want to add in some chords to our sequence. So anytime you switch the mode back to record and then play a note, as soon as you hit the first note, it will automatically overwrite that sequence completely. So being as we want to overwrite the sequence we've done, I'm going to leave it the way it is, and I'm going to switch it over here to 4 notes. 4-note paraphony. So let's add in some chords. And then I'm going to utilize the rest function over here. So right now I just played 3 chords into the sequence, so that of course takes up 3 steps. Then I want the 4th step to be a rest. So you just hit rest once, switch it back to sequence over here, and then of course make sure that play is enabled, and then hit a note. I'm going to put it on hold, turn the speed down a little bit. If you want to make it sound really cool, you can add some stereo delay. But that's of course for another video. Okay, so other interesting things you can do in the direction, that controls, of course, the direction of the sequence. So right now I have it set to order, but if we want to do forward and backward, just flip that over. One thing I've always liked about creating sequences and using the arpeggiator and stuff like that is if you change the direction, you can come up with something that you totally didn't intend but might actually sound really cool. Sometimes it doesn't sound that cool, but that's the beauty of it, is the experimentation that you can do with the sequencer and the arpeggiator, of course. But another thing to note, if you switch it over to random, now in this case I had a rest, say there's 4 steps, 4 beats, however you want to look at it, and on the 4th step there was a rest. So if we switch it to random, the rest is not going to be on the 4th step or the 4th beat every single time. It's going to be different. And of course, the interesting thing about random is it truly is random every single time. It doesn't just take your sequence and make it random once and then keep it that way. Every single time it goes through those 4 steps, it's going to be a random step from the sequence that you created. So other interesting things you can add here, ties and ratchets. Now a tie, basically creates a smoothing between 2 notes. And then, of course, a ratchet is kind of like a repeat, like a beat repeat. If you're used to like an MPC or something like that, that's what a ratchet's for, which is really interesting. We can create one of those real quick. So flip it back to record. So I'm going to put a ratchet on this B right here. You press ratchet and then press the note. Switch it back to sequence. Oh, and of course it's still on random. Let's switch it back to order. So that way you can kind of hear what ratchet does. Another interesting thing, say you don't like a certain step in the sequence, you can actually re-record over that in real time. So what you want to do is play the sequence and put it on hold, preferably. Now, if you switch to record, any note you play will replace that current step. So obviously you don't want it to be going too fast if there's like a certain step that you want to replace. So let's try and switch one of the steps here. You can see that it got rid of the ratchet because I didn't press ratchet for this note that I added. Or rather, I should say I replaced. So that's an interesting thing about the sequencer. Obviously, that's a little harder to pull off in real time, especially if you're playing live. But at least you have the option, especially if you're playing live, you can hopefully avert disaster if you're quick on your toes. So the other interesting thing, the Matriarch can have up to 12 sequences. So the way you achieve those, you'll notice there's a sequence knob over here. So you can switch between 1, 2, 3, and 4 right there. So if we try to switch to 2, you'll notice, and then switch it back to sequence, there is no sequence on there, so it just plays the same note over. But we can switch back to the one that I just had. So that's how you switch through the sequences. And then bank over here, octave and bank, you have 3 separate banks for your sequences. So right now it's on bank 1. If I switch it over to bank 2, then I have 4 completely brand new sequences over here. There's a sequence that I had left over from before. And then of course, you know, bank 3, you have 4 more. So that's how you access your 12 sequences. So that's definitely an interesting way. And the cool thing about that is if you turn the power off, it retains the memory of your sequences. So if you're using this kind of thing on the road, you know, you're playing multiple shows with this Matriarch, then you can just re-record, or you can just record all of your sequences ahead of time. And then as long as you make sure you don't flip this over to record when you're playing, then you'll always have those 12 sequences available every night, you know, and they'll be exactly the same, you know, from the night before, as long as you don't record over them. So that's definitely the beauty of the Matriarch. So another interesting thing, another little trick, just a quick one, is that you can actually add ties just by playing it on the keyboard here. So if we create a new sequence, switch it to record, if you hold, so let me add a couple notes. If you hold a note down and then press a second note while you're still holding that first one down, that will create a tie. So let's hear what that sounds like. So you can see that the tie button over here lights up when the tie happens. So there you have it. That's the sequencer on the Matriarch. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below. If you haven't already, please subscribe to get more videos like this, and I will see you guys in the next video.